So many heroes got buffed in the latest mid-season patch, especially those who were underperforming. That makes the DPS tier list for mid-season 9 pretty stacked, with a lot of heroes rising up ranks. And with the overall meta comps becoming more clear, so are the top DPS picks. If you want to grind the meta or rank up on your favorite heroes, use the link in the description to get access to a GameLeap membership. There are tons of courses and guides to help you improve faster and easier. Check it out and enjoy the video. Our mid-season DPS ranking starts off at C tier, but compared to the average A tier hero, they're situational at best. First and worst, it's still Torbjorn. Thanks to his turret buffs, he's above F and D tier, but an 8 DPS increase doesn't make him much better than before. Weighing up his strengths and weaknesses, it's mostly weaknesses, but he does have 300 health, including 50 armor, high spam damage, and a defensive buff ability. Unfortunately, that doesn't make up for his biggest weakness, his unfortunately shaped hitbox. He's easy to headshot, and he's the perfect size to always take full damage from spread-based weapons. The Season 9 projectile buffs were basically the nail in the coffin for his durability. The heroes he's supposed to counter, or at least peel, now basically hard counter him in the duel. Sombra, Tracer, Doomfist, all three of them farm headshots easily for a pretty fast time to kill, and at further ranges, he just loses to long-range spam heroes like he always has. He's not an easy kill when playing inside his own team, but he doesn't contribute as much as other heroes that can do the same. He could use a slight hitbox reduction, not unlike the next hero in C tier, Bastion. He's got the same sort of problems, but he can actually dominate with some decent brawl teamwork. His turret form is still worth forcing out. The damage output is obviously more than good enough, and the 20% damage reduction is a solid bonus for the 6-second duration, but outside of those 6 seconds, Bastion can't defend himself. And after you've used it, there's a hefty 12-second cooldown waiting. He's just the size of a tank even when he's in his recon form. His normal rifle even deals enough damage, but it's just nowhere near as consistent as everyone else is when shooting Bastion. That's why he can't defend himself, and why he loses basically every duel while not in turret form. If he can be protected before and between his form cooldown, he can be pretty strong, but still easily countered by long-range poke and flankers. Next is Junkrat as the final hero in C tier. His hitbox isn't actually that bad, but it's still bulky enough to be a problem. At the very least, Junk has the perfect amount of close-range damage to punish any diver that gets too aggressive. He can dish out a lot of burst while under pressure, so he can somewhat sustain himself on the flank. The big issue still keeping him down has to be that his one-shot got removed. As the defensive zone control hero that Blizzard designed, he's pretty bad, but with the Concubine Burst combo, he worked as a glass cannon flanker, but now he's just glass. His damage is great, but without the insta-kill, it's easy to respond to, and he can't even use his heavy damage in main because most maps have great hit-scan sightlines on the main fight. If you're not inside a room or on the flank, it's much easier to mark you and force you away. It's also pretty tough that Riptire isn't as lethal as it used to be. Not only does it have to be closer to confirm the kill on 250 HP targets, but it's the same health as before Season 9 while being easier to shoot. It's nowhere near as panic-inducing as it used to be, even when you don't know where it's coming from. Already up to B tier, we're starting with Symmetra. She's got good changes, but not good enough to help offset her massive disadvantage at range, although she hasn't gone without noticeable improvement. Her teleporter is now a nuisance to kill. That makes it a lot more reliable for switching between positions and staying in the fight for longer. The damage buffs are also good, but they'll only be noticeable at level 3, where she now deals 15 more DPS than normal. That puts her up to 195 DPS, which is pretty nuts. The problem is just staying at level 3 in a normal ranked game. Sim needs a lot of support just like Bastion, so without a good team that can shield you up and pocket you in the front line, it's not much better than before. But you can still solo engage with 3 turrets through your teleporter for an unexpected but still effective dive. Her damage and turrets are serviceable enough for that. Moving on to the fresh new Pharah. She's not bad, but she's not that good. Her fire rate and movement make for quick and effective dives, but setting them up unnoticed is pretty much impossible. She's also got the hitbox disadvantage. Spread weapons and projectiles are easier to hit on her even when she's flying faster, so forcing an engage after getting scouted is a quick way back to the spawn room. But with any normal backline, Pharah works well as a high damage spam source that can follow up on low HP targets. She just gets outperformed by better flankers who are better at everything, setting up the dive, killing backline, and killing other flankers. I would still be careful to write her off because she really has a lot of movement abilities. Combined with 120 damage rockets, she's basically what Junkrat wishes he could be. A high mobility, high burst damage flanker that doesn't have to sacrifice kill potential for movement. On to the next tier on B tier. Despite a decent ultimate buff, Reaper isn't getting any higher just yet. Being a B tier DPS means you at least have a decent engage, and Reaper just barely fits that description. This patch he only got his ultimate buffed, but it's a nice upgrade. More burst and more often. It doesn't make it easier to engage and disengage, but your ult fights are a lot more effective. It's actually something he was missing. For a hero with such limited range, you kind of need an explosive engage to finish the fight. Focusing the tank won't cut it unless they're trying to set up and you want to stop them. But for the games without an easy tank matchup, Reaper works well as a brute force diver. He can use his teleport to get in close and then just shoot targets. One of the good things about Overwatch 2 is less stuns, so most games you can really play your health to the wire and greed for picks. As long as you're not way overextended, Wraith form can always bring you back to your team. Almost at the top of B tier, it's Mei. Her extra ammo and ice block self-heal feel more like maintenance changes that should have come earlier at the start of Season 9. They don't make up for her weaknesses, but they make her less unnecessarily limited. 20 more ammo feels a lot nicer, but she can't one-shot Tracer, and her wall is really weak against the top frontline tanks right now. It barely forces abilities and is especially bad into Ram and Orisa. Even Sigma can usually buy enough time with his shield to turn the fight back in his favor, but using your Ice Wall and Blizzard together is a whole different thing. That's a guaranteed freeze and kill on most tanks, so it makes for a good ultimate engage. All in all, she has average poke, average range, and good utility. It's just not the type of utility that's strong right now, so if you want to play Mei, you better make sure your icicle aim is polished. Aim is a big thing this season, and the most important part of the top hero in B tier, Widowmaker. She isn't safe from all the flankers and divers running around, but as the model glass cannon hero of the game, she does a pretty good job. Top tier Widowmakers dominating lobbies doesn't happen often, which is mostly because she's a fragile hero that dies easily even through peeling. But killing Widowmaker isn't just a one-person job. If you're within line of sight to your backline, but still sniping the enemy team, it's much harder to take you out 1v1. If you don't die as soon as you're pressured, you're already off to a good start. Just the threat of a Widowmaker forces the enemy team to position differently, and then it's just up to you hitting as many headshots as possible before you die. Fully charged ones, of course. Next is Sombra, finally an A tier. She's at the threshold of being good enough to carry ranked games, but she's the type of hero that gets too strong and too annoying when they're buffed. Her improved virus makes her even better at picking off backline, and tanks are also in for a rough time. One hack in a bad position, and that's the fight. Being invisible helps a lot to identify weaknesses and set up fast kills. And just like Reaper, she's got an ultimate charge rate buff, except she has a nuclear option compared to Death Blossom. Unless EMP gets its 3-second silence reduced, it's impactful enough to always give you a good chance at winning the fight. As long as you use it in the first half of the fight before your whole team dies, it's going to be just fine. I'll stand by it as one of the best ultimates in the game, but even so, it's not good at making a bad situation better. It's just an instant kill button that can get you 1, 2, or even 3 kills depending on how good your setup is. Moving on to Hanzo, he's the same as before. Reliable for both picks and spam damage, the only issue he has is that he's more diveable than most. He still has a one-shot for Tracer and his storm arrows pack a ton of damage, so he can defend himself. The nerfed arrow size in the hotfix doesn't impact him too much, so as long as he has space to spam arrows, he'll be pretty good. This season makes it easier to consistently hit shots without missing, and with 120 damage logs every second, Hanzo's especially dangerous when he's in the zone. It may not be sustained DPS, but it's a big arrow that cuts your HP in half. And storm arrows come out so quickly that sometimes you can't react before getting bursted down. One normal body shot and 2 storm arrow body shots is already 270 damage. With a skinnier hitbox, he would be a real problem, but as it is now, he still loses to his brother, middle of A tier Genji. The only real problem he has is beam damage going through his deflect. Outside of that, he's strong and balanced. Season 9 buffs have made him better at poking and contesting angles, while still staying close to dive range. He's always been easy to force out because he's so reliant on deflect to sustain himself during the dive, and it's not hard to shoot the Genji until he has to use it, but now he can shoot back way better. And for the big finisher, Dragon Blade is now a clutch machine with how fast the swings are. You still have to pick and choose your battles well to get the most out of Genji's improved neutral, but it's definitely easier than before. Just keep track of your healer's positioning so you always have a safe zone to get back to. Moving on to Soldier 76, still the most reliable plug-and-play hit scan option right now. You really can't go wrong by just playing in the backline, dealing as much concentrated damage as you can. Playing further up puts you at more of a risk, but as long as you have your healing station, you can reliably survive any team's first engage. Although the cooldown has been nerfed to the point where you only have it once per fight, as long as you make that one use count, you'll be fine. And if you waste it, that's where you just fall back and play range like normal. As the Brawl meta keeps developing, it's more worth to have a mid-range DPS that can overwhelm the other tank matchup or get sightlines on the enemy backline, so Soldier is a little behind. But you can still do a lot with 171 DPS no matter where you're positioned. And for the final hero in A tier, it's Ekko. A lot of heroes have moved up to S tier, but Ekko is just a lot harder to play in ranked. Mauga being better is already a bad sign for Ekko's engages. Getting in focusing beam range means you're getting in critical damage range, but overall Ekko's very solid. The top of A tier is an improvement. She does best with high grounds and cover, but just as a basic damage dealer, she's got the same top tier output as she always has. Focusing beam is massively impactful with all of their burst damage being reduced. With line of sight to her supports, she can be a beast. All it takes is just steady ranged healing to help her fulfill her maximum potential. Now for S tier, first up is Ashe. Out of the top 3 long range spamming heroes, she's the spammiest. She has the same range as Soldier but with extra utility. Dynamite is crazy strong, and not just for hitting large groups with AoE burst and damage over time. It's also great for forcing out flankers or even backliners sitting behind cover. Bob has also proven to not be too short-lived. His damage buff doesn't mean much against tanks, but if he's not focused, he does some good zoning. Not all teams have the time to sit down and kill Bob in the middle of the fight, and those that do are still forced to slow down. Perfect for a long fight of spamming damage down range. Number 2 goes to Cassidy. The 2 simple things that make him good on his own are his health and damage. He's got 275 health that lets him be upfront and aggressive, and big bullets for shooting heads. It's not easy to walk up and 2-tap someone for a quick pick, but just the fact that he can do that means it's an abusable strategy. And the rest of his kit is perfect to deal with dive, his roll to mitigate burst damage, and his grenade to punish aggression. But there is a better option for the new tank meta, Sojourn. At the number 1 S-rank spot, she's back to being an optimal pick. Her railgun uptime is high, especially against Orisa, Ramatra, Mauga, and Roadhog. 4 out of the 6 tanks that got buffs this midseason. Frontline tanks without shields feed railgun shots all the time, and Ramatra's Nemesis form is one of the best times to clutch a Sojourn with how much charge you get while stopping the Ram from walking too hard. She only really fell out of the meta as heavy dive comps became stronger, but Power Slide remains one of the best movement abilities in the game. Playing your position right will always reward you with plenty of rail shots to pop off with. That's it for S tier, but we've still got one hero to go. Tracer is in must-pick territory, and will probably stay so until she gets her damage nerfed. So many of her counters from Season 9 have been completely flipped. Now she can run circles around Kiriko and Mei, where before she had to play extra careful. Still, she's not an easy pick. Even with all the blinks in the world and the most consistent burst damage in the game, you need a decent level of experience before you can start farming. If you haven't tried her yet though, you'd be surprised at how effective her damage is even with the fall-off nerf. That's it for the DPS tier list for Season 9. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.